Good afternoon. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Howdy Partner, which is our weekly series live hosted here on the AWS Twitch channel. And every week we use these 2 hours to showcase our amazing partners in the AWS Partner Network and the innovative solutions that they build here on AWS. Now, who am I? My name is Ragib Ahsan, and I am a partner solutions architect at AWS. And a big part of my job is reviewing architectures developed by the amazing community of partners and customers that we have here at AWS, and also to help them improve their solutions using our best practices. I'm based out of New York, and I'm specializing in AI/ML with an interest in the spatial computing field. And joining me here today is Lauren. So, Lauren, get in here and just say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey everyone. Hopefully some of y'all have this is not your first Howdy Partner episode and you've seen me before. My name is Lauren Marble. I'm a senior solutions architect in our spatial computing team. Been here at AWS for about 3 years. I'm based out of Seattle and excited to show you guys Motive and join us on here for his first hosting gig. Yay!
Yeah, it is my first hosting gig, so apologies for any hiccups that might happen this episode. But so you guys
It's
know
gonna be
who we
perfect.
are now. You know where we are. If you're anywhere weird or anything, how about you drop any locations in the chat? Like where's everyone tuning in from? And I guess Lauren kind of gave it away who we're talking about today. For today's episode, it's our partners at Motive.io, and they're going to be showing us their platform that allows organizations to create and control their VR training content. No code required, because that's what partnership is about. It's us at AWS and our partners at Motive.io helping you, the customer, and whether you're a large enterprise or a small business or a single developer, um, we're going to work together to help you reach your end goal and make your business better. So that's enough of us. Let's bring in our friends at Motive.io.
Hello.
How are you guys doing?
Doing great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. How about a round of introductions? We'll go with Ryan and then Peter, and the stage is yours.
Sure, yeah, I'll keep it quick. My name's Ryan. I'm CEO of Motive.io. We're based out of Vancouver, Canada. Our focus is immersive training. We do a lot of work with VR, but also AR and online immersive training as well. So I've been in the spatial space for a while and thrilled to be here today.
I'm Peter Wittig. I'm Director of Customer Experience at Motive.io, software dev by trade, but I mostly am helping people use the platform and understand what we can do. So I'll be taking you through a number of demos today. I love questions, so please ask questions, and we're happy to answer them.
Yeah, definitely remember, we want this to be as conversational as possible, so feel free to drop any questions. I'm able to post it here so that everyone can see. And also, here at Howdy Partner, we're very hands-on, lots of demos. That's what we love to see, and that's what these guys are here to show us today.
Yeah, that's it. So speaking of that, I am going to run through a couple quick slides, and it is going to be really fast, and then we're just going to go demos from there. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, just tell you a bit about us and what it is that we do. So coming up, sharing the screen. Say entire screen, and there we go. And just let me know when you can see it, please.
Got it.
Okay. Great, thank you. I couldn't see you anymore. So our platform is called the Motive XMS. And what we aim to do is have what you need on day one, as well as what you need in year 10 of your XR training journey. We focus on enterprise. Government is also a key partner for us. But the idea is that there are different tools for different sets of people, and you need to be able to integrate with systems that people are already using. So we use the term XMS. It's kind of a bit of an homage to both a CMS and an LMS, with which we play nicely. So these are kind of the large parts of the system, and I'm going to show you several of these today. Both hard skills and soft skills are possible. So generative and conversational AI, you can do with the platform, as well as picking things up, assembling machines, taking things apart. And I'll go through some examples of that. We can track analytics, and we do that on our platform. The reason we do it there is because usually when companies are first starting, they have a POC or they have a pilot project. And what they want to do is show that that was worth doing. So we need to collect analytics so they can compare that with their current process to show, yes, we did it faster. Yes, people learned the content better, things like that. Now, when those pilots go well, or those proof of concepts go well, they typically say, okay, well, now we need to integrate that with the rest of our data, which we're ready to do. So you've got online training, video training, all sorts of other training, usually in an LMS. So we're ready to do that integration whenever you are. And that's anything that is SCORM-based or XAPI. So we do it on a standards basis. It's quite easy to do. Now, I'd say this is the part that most people really want once they get past the pilot. They don't usually know that at the pilot stage, but having it there is wonderful. This is usually why people show up, codeless content authoring. And I'll show you a bit of this today too. It's not necessary to use the platform, but it's a fantastic tool. And I don't think you're going to see you haven't seen anything quite like it for this market yet. So that combines with our Unity SDK, which I'll show you a bit about as well. But the power of this is you can have a completely custom Unity scene, completely custom, whatever your workplace environment is. And that can be hooked to a web-based drag and drop authoring tool, which a training person and a non-Unity developer can use. So completely custom scene controlled by training professionals who know how to build the content. Splitting that workflow has some huge benefits, and we'll talk more about that today. So the codeless content authoring is usually why people show up, but to be honest, this is why people stay. I call this sometimes the boring but essential piece. When you have a pilot or proof of concept that succeeds, IT shows up and they say, can you do these things? Can I host it on a private cloud instance, on-prem? Do you have security compliance that you can demonstrate? What are my options for integrating with systems? Can I use SSO? And when you can say yes, your project can continue. And I'm going to talk a bit about using this infrastructure, even if you're an ISV who's making amazing VR or XR content for a large enterprise client. If you're doing well and you succeed with your pilots, and then you run into these blockers from IT, talk to us. You can use this infrastructure to keep building awesome content for that enterprise client. And we want to work with partners like that. So AI, I'll talk a bit about this. I'll just mention on the generative AI thing because it comes up all the time. I'm not going to be showing a demo of that today, but if you're interested, ping us and we'll talk more about it. So we use a RAG system for this. And the way it works is we have a client, very large client, who needs certain training procedures done in a very particular way. And so we upload those procedures to the RAG system. And then we have this training assistant inside of the training. You can ask that assistant anything about the training. What am I supposed to do here? What is this piece of equipment? How should I use this equipment? And they'll use the PDFs, the documents that you uploaded to that system to get the correct answer, but then bounce it off of something like OpenAI or generative AI to then answer in a more human-like way. So this has been a really successful use case we've had with it, and we're anxious to see this expand. StoryFlow is that codeless authoring. I'm going to show you this, so I won't talk too much about it here. Some great features, but I think seeing is believing. Launch, you're going to see a lot of launch today. This is where we do those integrations. So I'll talk a lot about LMS integration, and you'll be able to see how that can happen. But here would be a place you kind of initiate multi-user sessions. So if you want more than one person in a training session, you can do that. Again, insights, good for proving out pilots. Like this data can all go to your LMS. We find that LMS systems, and this is based on our clients, usually use SCORM to track that data. It's not a very rich data set. So we capture XAPI and a bit more. And you can view that additional data on our platform, which you'll see. SDK, we'll get into this, and I'll talk a lot more about that when we do. And then Launchpad. This kind of goes back to that idea of saying, well, let's say I've got 10 different APKs with 15 different modules that I need my people to go through. Launchpad is a single app that can launch APKs and even deep link to specific content within those APKs and just present it nicely to the user so they can go to one place and say, I'm going to do the assigned training that I need to do. The way you connect with that, maybe you're a third-party ISV, you want to take advantage of our infrastructure. We have a lightweight SDK that lets you add your project to Launchpad, as well as communicate with our infrastructure. And I think I'm going to start with Launchpad. So let's get into some demos, which are a lot more fun than this. So I'm going to go ahead and put on a headset and cast it. So again,
let's go.
All right. Yeah. So I'm going to ask for your help again to just tell me with your voice that you can see what I'm sharing. So once I cast the screen, you can tell me. So there we go. Yeah, you can see that?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I don't know if there's yeah, cool. Even better. All right. So I'm going to launch Launchpad. So this is that app that you can have on your headset to say, well, what are the modules that have been assigned to me? And there's one, onboarding module. Now this has been assigned to me through the Motiv XMS. But I'm going to do something that a normal learner would do before we do this. And I'll quickly hop back out of here. Just leave this running. I would go to my LMS. This would be an LMS at any enterprise. This is just some third-party LMS, has nothing to do with Motiv at all. And I've been assigned, Peter Wittig has been assigned this one, pick up the lab. Okay, I'll launch it. And I get this code, B80B3D. So I'm going to go back to where I was casting, B80B3D. B80B3D. I'm going to launch it. And that opens.
Hey, Peter, while you're logging in there, I noticed in your presentation and
yeah.
Oh, Lauren, I think your audio cut out a little.
I think I can hear you now. If you're
yes, I was just asking. I saw in your presentation and right now, yeah, in your presentation and right now you're using the Quest 3. Do you work on other heads-up displays or other devices, or you is a Quest 3?
That one there is the Quest 2, but we do work on all the Meta devices as well as Pico, HTC, Lenovo. This is definitely one of the benefits of using a platform like Unity is that this gives us a lot of flexibility for what we target.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. Absolutely.
Can you use the hand like a mobile device or a tablet?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not sure if we have demos lined up for that, but we can work on AR, on Vision Pro, on HoloLens, on flat screen, you name it. I think one of the kind of central visions that we have for this platform is that immersive and spatial training and all of these types of interactive experiences are fundamentally new and don't necessarily work that well with enterprise software, things like your learning management system, your SSO. And so Motiv XMS, which Peter's showing today, kind of stitches all of those pieces together. So all these different types of interactive experiences, this gives you that control center for managing them.
And I guess kind of connected to that, what would you say is Motiv's kind of ideal customer? And are there any interesting kind of case studies you guys could point to that you thought it was a really creative use of the platform?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely target Fortune 500 large scale enterprises. I think, not only are they, great companies to work with, but they also have enormous training budgets. And so they have the capacity to try out these new technologies, but also have a lot of room for cost savings down the line that you can get out of using immersive technology instead of having to say fly a bunch of people into a particular place to get there. So, but you know, a great case study is a collaboration we're actually working on with AWS and the Spatial team with Emirates Airlines, training their cabin crew on safety procedures and service procedures in the cabin. But that's really the tip of the iceberg. There are so many different places where VR is starting to get picked up.
No, I'll talk about a few of those as we go as well.
No, that's awesome. Also, we've got our first question in the chat. I'll just throw it in there. It's John Fex says, "Is the platform SOC2 compliant?"
Yeah, so we are security compliant. Maintaining that compliance is a huge part of what we do. This is really table stakes to deal with large enterprises. So we put security and stability front and center with everything we do. I mean, my background comes from kind of an enterprise software background, so that's very much central to how we approach the building this platform. But I digress. I'll let Peter's entered the science lab here. He can kind of show you just because we got a bit off track with a great conversation. The flow Peter's showing you here, he actually entered into this scenario through a traditional LMS. So this is a non-trivial thing. He made it look very easy. He got that launch code, punched it into Launchpad. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that essentially takes his login to that LMS and connects that directly into the headset here. So now everything he's doing here is being recorded back to the LMS that he launched from. So you can kind of continue the demo, Peter, but I think that context is a really crucial piece.
That's a great point. And I think, you know, sometimes I do skip over things, but you know, getting into the details is important because it's not trivial. So I'm just going to launch the scenario that I was assigned in my LMS, and this will spawn a few objects into the scene that weren't there before, but that I'll need for this particular training. And all I'm really going to do, this is not about the training scenario. It's about what I'm doing with the environment, where the data is going. You can certainly do more complicated things, but we'll do this first. So all I'm going to do is pick up these items from the lab and demonstrate that I've completed a very, very basic procedure. It says done. There's my report. Okay. And then it ends the scenario. And notice that the items that I spawned are now gone. So you can inject those items as you go, and we can talk more about that and how that works in a bit. So I'm going to jump back to this. This was the pop-up window that gave me the code. It knows I'm done. It's saying you already completed it, and you can close this window at any time. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm kind of going to come back over to my third-party LMS. And I'm just going to get out of here for a second and put this down. And you can
Peter,
see
you
that
you got 100%.
I did. You know, hey, you know, I've been studying, I've practiced, and it took me 5 minutes, but nonetheless. So you can see that what I did there, and kind of reemphasize Ryan's point, is I went into a third-party LMS. I launched it. I launched the module. I entered the code in Launchpad. That launched the correct APK with the correct content for me. I was able to go through that content, and that data is instantaneously back in the third-party LMS. So that's a great flow. So if you've made some awesome content for an enterprise client, or you are an enterprise and you're saying, why can't I get my XR data into my LMS? You can do it. Just give us a call, and I'll show you exactly what you need to do to get this set up for your systems. One other thing I mentioned kind of in the presentation is this is pretty, you know, not great. I mean, it tells you you finished and you passed and a basic score. That's SCORM. SCORM is not very granular. So let's look at this data in a more interesting way. So on launch, you can see here when actually I was in Launchpad, you can see onboarding module. And what I had done was assigned me as a learner there. I hadn't done that with the lab, but if I wanted to, and just to have it appear there, I can go ahead and add myself, or I can add groups of learners here. And again, if you haven't done that LMS integration, having the ability to add learners or groups of learners just with the platform is really handy. But anyways, here are those modules, and let's look at some insights. So here's the session I just did. I can see, here's my overall result. Here are those specific assessment items. I didn't do a multiple choice question in there, but had I, it would have been there. Here's all the XAPI data. So if you have an LRS, we can send that data right there. So SCORM or LRS, either way is fine. You can also look at this in a different way. So I could come in here and say, well, how am I doing over time? And again, I do kind of nail this one, so it's not great. But here's one specific session. Here's some other ones I did just before. I could look at my different attempts. I can look at my progression over time. So if I'm tracking a lot of different things, I could say, well, over the last 3 times, I've improved, for example. Finally, I can break down specific sessions and look at anywhere you made a choice or there's an assessment, and say, what was the choices they were presented with, and what were the choices that the user chose. And you can do that on a per session basis. Finally, you can look at all this stuff in aggregate. So you can say, for all the learners who went through, pick up the lab module, how are most people doing? And where are the areas where most people are having trouble? So you can quickly identify in your training where people need help, and then make some modifications to see that results improve. It's a whole lot of information. I'm going to slow down a little bit. Is everyone, any questions that are coming through now, or just curious, any thoughts, or will I press on?
We kind of had a sort of a clarification question. Someone was curious about what LMS meant again.
Yes, that's a great question. And please, I will throw out acronyms, and if I ask questions about that too. So it's a learning management system. And we find that large enterprise companies and many others that are medium-sized businesses, it is the system they have to track all of the training for their given employees. And usually it's online training, like you go in, you watch a video, you do some multiple choice questions. It could be, reading some documents and taking a test, anything like that, interactive videos, and all that's stored in the learning management system. And that's been a standard for decades. People have been doing that. SCORM is the standard they've been using. Now, newer ones use another standard called XAPI. But these large companies have, as I say, decades of data. And when XR came along, XR is like, oh, no, we've got all this amazing stuff, and you can look at the data in this way. They say, yeah, that's awesome. But also, it absolutely needs to be in my LMS too, with all of the other training results. And so we provide a way to say, take this awesome XR training data and put it into the system that they're using for every other form of training.
That's great.
So any other thoughts on that before we dive in a bit more?
Yeah, I think you're good. Dive in.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is just say, I'm going to go back to content management here. Here's a module. And I'm kind of going backwards, say, here's what you can do. And then we're going to build something up and bring it to that point. But just so you can see how that works is what I did, how did this get onto this LMS here? I'll delete the course. All I did was go to Motive. And again, this is one of those things where I'm going to make it look really simple, and it is with Motive. But this is quite a large bridge to cross, and we've run into a lot of companies who have struggled with this. So I need to get this module onto my LMS. How do I do that? I pick the format that my LMS uses. I download it. There it is. I come over here. I import it. And this will bring us right back to that moment we were at a second ago, prior to me running through the course. There it is. I can just launch it. So again, if you've got XR content and want to get that into your LMS, what I just showed you is click, 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 and then all of a sudden it's available in your LMS. And we can do a single sign-on setup with your LMS and the Motive platform. Your learners never need to go to the Motive platform or know that it's even there for this data to work. Okay, so I'm going to come back to over here. So you might say, well, that's cool, but how did this content actually get here? So it can be put here in one of two ways. So one is that you can upload content from StoryFlow, and I'm going to show you that, our codeless authoring tool. Or another way is to use our lightweight SDK, and you can define an application here. And basically what you'll do is you'll give it a name, ABC. You add it as a platform, and for VR, you're going to be doing Android, and you say IO or com. Awesome ISV, my training. And this is going to be the bundle ID of your APK on the headset. And then what we can do is assign this application to a module. And this is going to be using our lightweight SDK. We've got nice videos to show you how to integrate that with your product. It's very quick. One of our partners says one of the things she likes the most about our platform is the fact that she can set up LMS integration in 5 minutes. So if you want to see that or talk more about it, ping us afterwards, and we're happy to have that conversation. So again, if you already have content, you can use our lightweight SDK, get it on there, or you can use StoryFlow. I will make a mention here that almost everything we built, actually, I would say everything we built, is because a client had a problem and they needed a solution for it. So we're not the types to say, oh, this would be cool, let's build this and let's try it. We're solving real problems that clients have had, and that's been a big benefit because we've noticed that most of our clients run into the same problems again and again. And when we have the solution for them, for the problems when they hit them, that's gone very, very well.
Yeah, and to interrupt you, do you have kind of an example of how StoryFlow improved the workflow for an enterprise client?
I sure do. So let me just do this real quick. So this is how most people make VR. It's kind of a difficult system. So L&D are learning and development, and large enterprises have whole departments of these people, and they build training in every other medium except XR. And so they're very good at making training. And so this is the process that most people use. So L&D gives developers these procedures and documents, spreadsheets, whatever. Developers code this. While that's happening, your L&D team is waiting. Then you have developers creating a new build, and they've got content on in the APK, and they put that on a headset, and they give it to L&D, and they're going to test if that's right. While that's happening, your developers are waiting. And so half your team was usually waiting on one half or the other. By splitting things up and saying, hey, we're going to do this with StoryFlow, where L&D gets StoryFlow and Unity devs have the Unity SDK, we're able to drastically improve the time it takes for people to create new content. And so much so that I will show you one case study that you brought up earlier. So here's one, Chevron. So one of our training modules, we were told would estimated save them $18 million a year. And we were told by the person who ran this that this is a conservative estimate. In that procedure that process I was showing you before, what they were using, it was taking them 6 months to build new procedures. When they started using StoryFlow and our Unity SDK, that reduced to 6 to 9 weeks. So 66% reduction in time to produce new training modules as a result of using StoryFlow and our SDK. So that's a great question. So thank you for that one.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. Dang.
So let's get into some Unity. So what I'm going to do is say, here's that laboratory where I did the pickup assignment. And, I was able to say, okay, well, I picked up the cans, I picked up the pizza box. All that happened in this lab. I'm just going to emphasize, I'm going to show this, I'm going to show a soft skills thing in a little bit, but just to emphasize, this can be anything. You have all of Unity. Build any scene you want. Could be an open pit mine. It could be an office, a hospital. It doesn't matter. Any scene. And you can use the Motive SDK to hook it to StoryFlow. So with the SDK, there's 3 main things it'll do. A few more, and I'll show you a couple of them. First is it takes a 3D scene and makes it interactable. So right now, most of these things are just nice pieces of art. You can't really do anything with them. Second is you hook the scene to StoryFlow. And third is you send the data back to launch. So I'm going to put on a headset, And maybe I'll maximize the game window just to, so this looks a little better when I run it. And here we go. Can everyone see Unity, by the way?
Yep.
Oh. Now what I got to do here is enable quest link. So 2 seconds. Quest link. And I'm going to stop that. Hopefully it'll let me stop it before we'll see what happens here. It's funny how these things always take just that little bit longer when you're doing a live demo.
Of course, they want to make sure that you're going to stick around, that we have some downtime to talk,
Right.
Build the anticipation a little.
Well, and I think this is actually a good a good example of one of the places where the tool can really shine and really increase productivity, because we're doing the demo here with Unity. But one of the nice things about StoryFlow is that you can actually author content directly to the headset, so you don't need Unity, installed. And as you can see here, even for somebody who's used it for 10 years, Unity can be a bit of a challenging software product to use. So, by taking this out of the equation, we can actually really speed up, and that's where some of the organizations are seeing the big uptick in productivity.
That's a great point. Yeah, I think that's really important to highlight. So what I want to show you now is I want to pick this up, but it's just a nice piece of art. I want to push this button and have distilled water come out, but it doesn't. So let's use the SDK to make these two items interactable.
And just for people who aren't familiar, I don't know if you talked about it while my internet was freaking out, but it should be fixed. For people who are unfamiliar with the Quest, when you see the hands in the field of view and you see those little laser beams, that's him controlling it with the Quest controllers. So makes it a little bit intuitive, but it's not like keys that you have to get used to. It's all part of the heads-up display kind of ecosystem for Quest.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. Yeah, that is the case.
We never know who's online.
Thank you, and I can definitely get into my tunnel and so I appreciate it.
Yeah, we've got another question from
Okay.
John. Is this just available for Unity?
Right now, yes, although we are working on making this making this work for Unreal, which is the other kind of main game engine and 3D engine that the industry uses. So that version of the SDK will be ready by the end of the year. So that gives us coverage over probably 99% of the immersive content out there.
Cool.
So thanks for that question, John. And please keep asking. So I've got this cylinder. I want to be able to pick it up. You can write scripts, and I'm sure many people have, or you can just right-click, go to the motive menu, and say, make grabbable. And you can do cool things where you say, I'm going to have a grab point. I'm going to move a hand up and down, and say when you grab it, it grabs it there. I can have, have it be so I can grab it from a distance or not. A lot of options here, and you can change what you want to do. I'm just going to leave the default. I can pick it up now. You've probably seen other SDKs that can do that. So, I think you've probably seen several. So I'm going to do the water dispenser. I want to push the button and have water come out. I've got a box collider up near the button. I'm going to right click on that and go to the motive menu, usable actions, and say when user touches the object. And that adds the scripts I need to do that. Again, I can control these things and I can have them do what I want. I'm going to say prevent rapid touches. I'm going to add a particle effect on this for the water. And just say on use, it's going to play. And this is cool because I've got the box collider already set up. It's just going to say, well, when I use it, meaning when I touch the box collider, and that's it. So now let's see what I can do. So before I couldn't interact with these objects in any way. And now I'm hanging out in the waiting room.
While this is loading, I think you touched on it a little bit in the slides, and maybe early on when you were bringing things up, but who is normally developing these? Like, is it the trainers? Do they have a dev team?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think kind of certainly Peter touched on it, but it's helpful to revisit the flow here because it is one of the things that makes this system unique. What we've done is kind of recognize that products like Unity and Unreal are exceptionally good at creating these realistic worlds, and recreating that type of functionality would be very difficult. You'd end up having to recreate a Unity or Unreal. So we decided it was really important to work with these systems as opposed to necessarily try to replace them. But we also recognize that there's a lot of people who simply can't or won't ever really be able to fully onboard and take full advantage of the system. So the Motive SDK and StoryFlow are broken into these two independent pieces where you have a development team who kind of creates the environment, does this configuration that Peter's showing now, that creates these kind of realistic interactions, makes the environment have physics and gives it that sense of physical space. And then from there, you take that configured environment and hand it off to the authoring team. That authoring team is L&D professionals, like you were mentioning, learning designers, people who have familiarity with, even products just like PowerPoint or Adobe Captivate, these learning tools. And what's nice about that side of the equation is that when you're working in StoryFlow, all you need is a headset. You don't even need a computer. You can just put your headset on, log into StoryFlow, and go back and forth between our web editor and the headset to build the training scenarios that you're going to use. So it really is both. And because of the way it's broken up, it gives us a lot of flexibility with how we engage with these companies. So some of them will have a team of Unity developers to do that assembly piece, that piece where you kind of create this realistic physical feeling world, or that part can be outsourced and they just get the interactive environments delivered to them so that they can just focus on that authoring and building out the training scenarios.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And people can work with us in different ways, and then they can choose to say, well, now we'd like to work with you this way or that way. And that's proven to be a good model for us. So I couldn't pick this up before. Now I can. I'm going to drop it, and it's going to go right back, which is the default behavior. I can turn on this faucet now, and I see some water. Hooray. So a couple quick clicks, and I made these two items interactable with the SDK. Now, this is this is pretty simple stuff. So I'd like to just point out that you can, with the SDK, you can configure objects to say, I want to control how an object behaves, how a part of an object behaves, a single variable, a single event, groups of those, how one object interacts with another, how a part of an object interacts with another part of an object, how an object interacts with the user. All those are configurable with the SDK, and those are things you can expose to StoryFlow as well.
And I do want to just to kind of reemphasize, what Peter's saying, and then link back to your question, Lauren. This is where we really distinguish between what makes the environment look and feel real. So those types of interactions, those are typically the domain of a developer, because it requires a lot of, even though we've streamlined the process with the SDK, you still have to understand, how is the game engine functioning? How is the gravity going to work here? How does the physics work when two objects collide with each other, and so on? So we can take that phase, and this is where we call it the assembly phase. This is where you create that realistic environment. And then, as Peter's going to show later on, hand it over to StoryFlow.
Can you, as part of the content that, say, a developer, the learning designer could embed, can they embed other types of data? Like, say they have a PowerPoint. It's like, if you come here, you can see the 4 slides of data, or if you go over here, you can see a procedure brought up. Not just to kind of compare.
Absolutely, and that is, and you'll see with StoryFlow, that's exactly what StoryFlow is intended for, injecting that information and that media into the scenario. But it is interesting, and you kind of raised an interesting point, which I think is absolutely worth highlighting and discussing, is that I think when we think of traditional training content, we think of things like PDFs, videos, content that you consume. And one of the really interesting things about VR in particular is that it is inherently interactive.
Mhm.
And so we actually find that, those types of media, videos and PDFs and slideshows are often still best consumed just on a normal device, a computer or a phone. Where VR really, really is impactful is when you're able to get into an environment and take actions, learn by doing, go and have those physical interactions in a realistically rendered space, so that you start creating that muscle memory that's going to help you with recalling those steps down the line.
And I also have a question related, sort of, where is there this capability for maybe several people to be working and being trained at the same time in this similar setting and be
Yes.
able to see each other as well?
Yes, absolutely. So multiplayer is certainly something you can do, and you can even have people observing through the web.
Mm, okay, that's
Nice.
cool.
So what I'm going to do now is kind of get into a bit of story flow. So I want to make this cylinder and this water dispenser something I can use in story flow. So let's look at the story flow project. Here's a particular story flow project. Now, you can see I have a scenario, which is to pick up the lab. This is the one that I ran through. And I'll show you that script in a little bit. But what I want to do is add those two items, the cylinder and the water dispenser, to some catalogs so I can use them in a script. And what I need to do that is to give them a name. So come back into Unity, and I'm going to right click on this and go to Motive Menu and say Make Scene Object. And that adds a script called Motive Scene Object. By default, there's a name field which gives it the value of the game object. So I'm just going to take that name. You can change it if you want, but I'm going to take that name. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to add to this catalog graduated cylinder. Now what it does is, this is a catalog of a particular type. It's called a named object catalog. And so when I have named object catalogs and they have a certain value like this, it'll know to look for something within the scene that has a motive scene object script, and then it does a string match on those two things. But if I'm a learning designer, I don't need to know that. I just need to know, hey, I've got a folder called glassware, and I can use these things in my training procedure. So that abstraction of saying, here's what the developers know, here's what the training people need to know, and making a clear distinction between those. Now, we do have lots of types of catalogs, and we're always adding more. But anyway, we're just going to stick with a few basic ones for today. So I'll also add the water dispenser. I'll do the same thing. Motive, make scene object. And I'm just going to grab the name. There it is. And speaking of multiplayer, we add this network identity script when we add a motive scene object. And when you have multiplayer functionality, this is just a way for it to keep track of what's seen and the objects in those scenes, so that information can be updated for each user going through.
So is the purpose of these catalogs, because like in my head, you have the scene, right? Like the base scene that's already been provided, and each of those things is available somewhere, but that's not quite the case. You kind of have the scene, and let's say I'm the learning designer, and I go in and I'm like, oh.
No, that's a great point. So typically what this setup, configuring these catalogs, is part of that assembly step. So part of that kind of world creation step. So when you as the learning designer are delivered the application, it comes along with a pre-populated workspace where you're able to get in and start that authoring process right away. So these kind of steps are all, under that umbrella of assembly, making that environment interactive and ready for you to take on and author something as an author.
Okay, so the learning designer would really never even open Unity. Like they would never have to do anything. They would just do everything from the web editor. Got it.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. And that's where that real gain, so that 66% improvement in time, they can iterate independently of the developers. And I'm going to show you they even have a few more tools to do that as well. So for this one, actually, I'm going to do one thing because I think I forgot to do this before. No, it's perfect. Great. So I'm going to add a new scenario. And that scenario is going to be water dispenser, demo. And I've got a demo script. I'll add that to the scenario. There you go. Now, the way I like to think about this is, again, the way that most people build VR, they build it like a music box. And if you ever want to change the tune, you need to send it back to the person who made the machine. The tune and the machine are integrated. They're one thing. We take a very different approach. Our analogy is to say, once you create that 3D environment, that's your theater. It's your stage, and on which many different scripts can play out. I don't need to build a new theater every time I change the play that's going to happen there. And so in the same way, StoryFlow is the place you make the scripts that play out in that theater. One script was cleaning up the lab. This one is going to be about the water dispenser. So let's open this script. So I've got an anchor here, which is just a coordinate in space, and we'll talk a bit more about anchors in a little bit. I'm just going to do a basic demo to, I'll call this, just to show that we can connect to those two objects and do something with them. So StoryFlow over here, these are frames. Each frame has got conditions and resources. When the conditions are true, the resources happen. Over here, I've got resources, conditions, variables, and events. You can get really detailed. You can have dynamic content, all sorts of really cool stuff. And our knowledge base has got a lot of detailed information about that. So for now, I'm just going to have a frame called instructions. And actually in setup, I need to add a few items. So here are those catalogs again, and I'm going to add the catalog items I want to use in this script. The water dispenser, I'm going to use the sink, which is already configured, but just for time's sake. And then I'm going to add the glassware, so the graduated cylinder. So now that I've added these to my script, they'll be available in dropdowns as I go. So I might have 500 things in the catalogs, but if I only add 6 of them to a script, only those 6 will be available in the dropdown. And again, we found with customers, that's the way they wanted it. So I'm going to add a simple message. It's called a screen message. Drag that in. And I want some instructions to play out. Instructions, put the cylinder in the sink and turn on the water. Okay, great. So you'll see that these are on the same level. I can also have parent-child relationships here. And you can do that at any level. So on the same level means they happen at the same time. Parent-child means it's one after the other. And so you can have multiple active things or even multiple active branches available at any given time. So for now, I'm going to say, well, when the instructions are done, I want something to happen, but I don't want anything to happen until I've actually closed that message. So I could add the condition here and keep going. We try to make things like that even easier. So every resource has a button at the bottom, and there are events linked to that button. So I can say, well, when this window is closed, that creates a child frame for me with a condition that I've closed that screen message. And then when this is closed, these things will happen. I'm going to put away the cylinder, or put in the sink. So I'm going to find a place resource. And I'm going to say, I'm going to place the cylinder into the sink. You can add all sorts of prompts, and maybe we'll get into fancier prompts a little later, but I'll just put a piece of text there. I'll just say, put in sink, and I'll anchor that to the cylinder. So that will appear next to it. When that's done, I'll say, when that's complete, I want to turn on the water. And for that, I'm just going to touch the water dispenser. And then from here, I'll say, nice job, just so we can see that it's done. And I'll say, well, when that's complete, nice, I'll use a notification. And there we go, notification, nice job. Cool, and you can sound controller vibrates. Maybe I'll add I got a check mark or something. Yeah, great. Nice job. So this kind of winds up being a table of contents of what's happening in this script. I can launch one script from another, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. This is just a very basic thing to see that we've connected up those items and can use them now. So I want to run this script. And this is the demo script here. The demo script is linked to the water dispenser demo scenario. There it is. And that's part of this water dispenser demo StoryFlow project. Now I'm going to go ahead and run this, and we'll run that script and see it play out.
So when you're testing from the web editor, that's what you were just in, right? The web editor.
Yep.
How do you test out your scenario without jumping back into Unity?
So I can this can be a standalone APK and a headset, and I'll show you that in just a second. But this could be, just a headset you have on your desk right now. And if that APK was on it, every change we just made would be available to you the next time you started the app. No new redeploy, no new APK, no new builds. So you can quickly just see the results of what you did in the web editor in the APK you already have.
Gotcha. Okay.
And again,
it's a little bit tricky to get that across here. We use Unity to simplify the demo because it's the easiest way to share the screen. But what Peter's seeing here is exactly what you would see if you just had a headset with no Unity on your website.
Understood.
So you can see I've got the two scenarios, and these are the exact same ones in StoryFlow. This one says draft, where this one was a published one. So I'm going to run that. Put the cylinder in the sink and turn on the water. Okay. It says put it in the sink. Sorry, I goofed something up. My fault. Let me do that again.
Also, Peter, before you mentioned something about soft skills training being done too. Like, are you going to be showing us any of that today?
I sure am. So keep me honest on the time, because I definitely want to get to that.
No, we're
good.
Time.
Yeah, we're at 56 minutes. We have time.
Okay.
Just checking.
So I think it's fun because with the same tool, StoryFlow, you can create scenarios that are both hard skills and soft skills. So these are different organizations. I'm just going to the Motive Demo organization. I'll go to my particular workspace. I'll choose the project, which is called Water Dispenser Demo. It's grabbing all of the new information or anything that's different, and I'll run this Water Dispenser Demo, put the cylinder in the sink and turn on the water. Notice that I have no prompt on here now, but I said, well, when I close this, I want the prompt to be there. And so it is. So I'm going to pick this up. I'll put it in the sink. I'll turn on the water. It says nice job. So you can see that what we authored played out. And so these items are now connected to StoryFlow, and I can control a procedure that uses them using the web editor. So again, it is really important to say, and I'm going to say it again, though I just said it is, if this was an APK on your headset at your desk right now, every change we just made together in StoryFlow would be available to you the next time you start that APK. No new build, no new redeploy. So these types of content changes can be made independent of a Unity developer once you have the configured scene. So I'm going to do a couple of things here. I'm going to pretend now that I'm the learning designer, and the developer has handed this off to me and said, this is something I want you to go through and make a little better. And we'll go from there. So actually, before I do that, one final thing here. So I've got a few scenes. I've got, this is our SDK, and it allows for connection with Launch and with StoryFlow. We've got the Motive Lab, which has the walls, and it has the sink and many other things, and then some props to configure. I'm actually going to unload this scene. And actually, I'll just remove it entirely. So one of the things you can do with the SDK, and it's really, really useful, is you can upload Unity asset bundles to StoryFlow and spawn them with StoryFlow scripts into the scene. So again, if you've deployed 500 headsets and you all of a sudden need a brand new tool for a new procedure, you can just configure it in Unity, upload it to StoryFlow, and then inject it from there. And so that's what I did with this. I just took the water dispenser and the cylinder, and I made it into a prefab. I gave that asset bundle a name. You can go to Motive. You can go to the asset bundler. You can choose what you want to do, choose the project you want it to go up to, build and upload, and then you're going to see it up here in your catalogs. So right here, I've got my water dispenser demo assets. I'm going to do something here so you can see that you can use multiple scripts. So I'm going to add a new script here. And maybe I'll put it up there, and I'll call this spawn assets. And I'm actually just going to launch another script.
And
So
what
this
does
is
spawn
nice.
mean? I know spawn means something very specific in Unity. So
So what it means here is that, and I'll open the script up so you can see it. So what it's doing is it's saying, okay, well, I've got, actually, I'm going to get rid of this step for right now. I'll just close that off. So what it's going to do is say, I've got Unity asset bundles of the demo props, for example, that, which is both the water dispenser and the cylinder. And I'm going to drop those into the scene. So I'm going to say they're not in the scene when you first run it, but now I'm going to instantiate those objects into the scene so I can use them.
awesome.
Yeah, and this is a really critical piece of the system because, the common way to build out 3D training content right now is to build everything, again, as we've talked about, into the Unity scene, in the Unity environment, and then build an application, just like a game you'd install on your phone. One of the things that Peter's showing here is our ability to actually populate that environment with interactive objects at runtime. So you can imagine having, an empty environment on your headset, and then you can stage all sorts of different training by putting different interactive elements into that environment, or even potentially replace the entire environment at runtime. So it gets a little bit kind of technical, but it allows you to avoid some of the churn around producing a new build, getting through all the testing phases, deploying it to all of the devices. With Motive, you can populate those environments with interactive elements after the app is already deployed, which is unique and not something that a lot of other systems are able to support.
And I think for the people who are watching now or in the future, that's something that's really kind of critical to understand here, that you do not have to use Unity. You can do it here without having to do the rebuilds. If you've ever developed even a simple app, doing something very minor can be very painful to test and retest and move and do things with. So,
or you make one little mistake and you have a console full of red lines and you have no idea where they came from. Yeah, absolutely.
So this kind of is almost like guardrails, like for development, where you can just go in and have people do. I love that about this. So hopefully people who are watching can fully appreciate what that means for when it comes to actually developing an application and developing in the sense of not developing in Unity, doing it independently of that.
Yeah. So, sometimes when you're loading these assets too, we have a nice feature which is a fade out, and then you can fade back in. And so if there's a load time, and sometimes I can drop the frame rate a little bit, but if you just fade out for a second and then fade back in when it's done, then your frame rate has jumped back up, and that it's just a much smoother experience for the user. So at
Can you
the end of
explain
this,
that one more time? I'm sorry, I don't think I quite understood.
Sure.
What is the fade out does what?
So like a fade out it's just like a movie, like, you're like, hey, you're watching the movie and then it fades to black and then it fades back in. And you'll see that in just a second. So I'll run it so you can see. But what happens is when you're spawning in, I mean, small assets is nothing, but like you could be spawning in huge amounts of assets, in which case that'll drop the frame rate. But if you fade out, you don't notice the frame rate drop because it's all black. And then when the spawn is done, the frame rate jumps back up, and then you fade back in and your frame rate is normal and you feel fine.
You've taken a lot of inspiration from theater and film.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was actually going to allude to that. And so part of the reason is one of our co-founders actually comes from the film industry. So we actually have that kind of in our DNA. But I also think that it does highlight a really important approach that we've taken with StoryFlow, which is to say that these resources, these conditions, although they are technical in nature at some level, we've tried to construct them so that they make sense kind of from a human standpoint, if you can imagine. And one way that I sometimes try to describe StoryFlow is that, as opposed to programming languages, which are built for computers, StoryFlow is built for people. It's constructed around concepts that make sense to an author from a human standpoint, which is why something like fade out literally just means fade the scene out. It uses concepts that are much more accessible. And then behind the scenes, we kind of do all the technical work to make those concepts function in the headset or web page or whatever deployment option you're using.
So you're
And
saying you can
then,
take the person out of the film industry, but you can't take the film
Yeah, that's right.
industry out of the person.
but
Sorry,
then what
sorry, go ahead.
about for the more tech savvy people? Like, can they throw in their own effects and that kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and
Yes.
that's really where this kind of two-headed beast, if you will, comes from. That all of that capacity is available to you on the assembly side, so you can build out sophisticated animations. You can plug them in using something we call behavior models. We really have tried to find that balance. I mean, as a developer myself, when we were kind of building the early versions of this, I really don't like tool sets that limit what I can do as a developer. I want tool sets that make my job easier or faster or more efficient, but I don't want something that, puts a barrier around what we can do. So that's where on the assembly side, you really have free reign to build the scenario and the interactions however you want. Your only job there is to make sure that that's communicated to the author so that they can kind of use these concepts that are available in StoryFlow to bring the pieces together and construct that training scenario.
That's great.
I love earlier how you had to point out, imagine if something was built for a human. Or so you said something to that effect, because it is so, especially in the space that we're in, we're used to, talking to the computer and working with the compiler and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, the reality is that it can be easy to get complacent when you're used to that, but as soon as you move out of the realm of all of us who work in the tech industry, you realize that these are not common concepts, and trying to kind of get people to wrap their head around them is very, very challenging. And again, you want to present something using languages and structures and concepts that make sense, again, at that human level.
Yep. And that fine balance between being able to people to have options on what they want to do, but not overwhelming with customization, right? Like I don't need need 20 different kinds of milk. I just need milk.
Well, no, that's a great point. And the other, it is important also to realize that a learning developer, they have a job to do, and they have a certain amount of content that they need to produce. And they, they do, to some extent, you need those guardrails to keep your focus on getting the, getting the results over the line.
Yep. Love it.
So I'm going to show you that fade out and fade in and a few other things here. So, but really what I wanted to show you with this is that these assets I uploaded into StoryFlow. I'm going to spawn them with a script in StoryFlow. And then what I'm going to do is say spawn assets. In the demo script, the first thing I'm going to do is launch this script, spawn assets. This is something I could reuse again and again, depending. But at the end of this one, I just say I have an event. And all this is really simple. You don't have to think about this in a technical way at all. An event, when it is a resource, you're saying, this happened. I'm saying the assets spawned. And over here in the demo, what I'm going to do is just move this over and make these all children of this one. And I'm going to add a condition here, which is that exact same event. And when it's a condition, it's a question. Has it happened? And then once it does, the rest of the script will execute. Now I'm going to see if I can do this from here. And so you can actually see it in the APK as opposed to me doing it in Unity. So I can pretend like I am being an L&D person or a non-Unity dev. Let's just say that. So I'm going to cast again. I don't usually do it this way. So, thanks for joining me in this adventure.
We're here for it.
All right. All right, you can see it. Okay. So I'm going to launch an APK on the headset, Motive Training Lab. And so here I am. I'm the training developer, and I've got this APK, and I say, okay, well, I'm not going to go against launch because I'm still working on this. I'm going to go against StoryFlow. I'm going to authorize this for StoryFlow. And you can see the wonderful AWS URL there. So
I'm from New Mexico, and 505 is an area code there. So I'm just going to assume you did that as a nod to me. So thank you.
Oh, you bet. Yeah, my pleasure. Well, maybe I can do one more thing as well in just a second. So 886 248. So on StoryFlow, there is literally this thing right here. I enter the number, I hit the check mark, it says okay, and then in the headset, I immediately am good to go, just like I was in Unity. So I'm going to run that just to say, okay, well, hey, I just got this from the developer. I'm going to just see what they did. Notice nothing there. Fade back. Hey, it's there. Cool.
That's awesome.
So, hey, I wish that was capital. And actually, that is totally in the wrong spot. The training actually has it there. So they put this in the wrong place. I wish I didn't have to go back to the developer and tell them to put it in the right spot. Nice job. And there's no reporting of my results at all. This is okay. I've got some work to do as the trainer. So I'm going to hop out of here and go back to StoryFlow. Actually, I'm going to do one thing. I just want to double check and make sure I did this right and had this all set up. I have anchors. Anchors is just a position inside of, it could be a position I defined in the Unity project, or it can be one that I defined. I didn't fix that. So there we go. So now I'm just resetting this so it has no position. I'm going to come back to my spawn assets because this is the advantage of spawning an asset versus having it in there, though you can do it if it's already in there too. I want to actually move that cylinder to a specific position. So I've got an anchor, I've got the cylinder, and because the developer put it in the wrong spot, I'm going to, as the trainer, say, I'm going to put that in the right spot. So I'll go into Motor Training Lab again. And I'm a developer, so like when I talk to developers, I say the opposite thing. I say, well, and I should have told it to save my credentials, which I will definitely do this time. So 2 seconds. But what I say to developers is now you don't have to deal with all those content tickets all the time, because isn't that a pain? So the trainers can do that. So it works both ways. And at the end of the day, I genuinely think both parties are happier because they can focus on the things that they're good at and the things that they like to do. And so that's my honest opinion of it.
Just in case anybody's tracking the first 3 numbers as area codes, 393, when I Google what area code that is, it brings up Italy. So I don't know. Anybody in Italy? Anybody out there?
No, not here. So what I'm going to do is go to demos again. So I'm going to go back to my Motive Lab demo, water dispenser demo, and I'm not going to run the scenario. I'm going to bring up the XR editor, and I'm going to go into a catalog, and this is pulling the exact catalogs that are in StoryFlow. I'll go to My Anchors, and I'll pick the cylinder position. Great. So I think it's just over at 00 here. Maybe I'll bring that again. Catalogs, My Anchors, cylinder position. Yeah, there it is. Great. I'll close that for now. I'm just going to pick that up. I've also got this awesome menu here. So I can say, well, I can scroll through the different anchors that I want to change. I can do rotate, move. I can bring it right to me. I can have it reset it back to what it was, change the gravity, or I can just pick it up and move it where I want it to go. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring it over here and say, it's actually, that cylinder should be right here. And I don't know if I have a collider on that, so I'm not going to use gravity. But now I'm going to save this position. Great. Now I'm going to exit edit mode. And because I said I want the cylinder to show up at the cylinder anchor position, I'm going to run this demo again. It's going to fade out and bring the cylinder and everything back. Oh, great. It's over here now. So I didn't need to go back to the developer. I didn't need a new build. I didn't even need to ask them for coordinates. I simply put an anchor and said, I want the thing to appear there, and I was able to do it. So again, huge time saver. What we've noticed is that there are often, especially for large enterprise, there's often the same standard operating procedure happens in multiple places. And where it happens, they have different layouts. And so you may be running the exact same procedure, but all of a sudden everything is in a different place. And so with Storyflow, it's very easy to say, I'm going to reuse the same procedure and just say, load everything in a separate script to the right spot for, the location in Seattle or the location in Barcelona, wherever you are. It can just be very easily configured and reused. So the other thing that they don't have in here at all is any metrics, no metrics at all. I want to know when things are happening and I want to track them. So we are able to track things in a few ways. You can do, I'll show you a much nicer example, but this is kind of a quick and dirty way. I'm going to say, well, when something gets put in the sink, I want to know that and I want to track it. So I have assessment items, and these all conform to the XAPI data standard, and this one to SCORM. So what I want to do is say, put in the sink, okay, I'm just going to say, well, when you get to the point where you have completed that, I'm going to just give myself a pass. Cylinder and sink. I'll give myself a pass. Cool. I get to this part where I've turned on the water, and here I'll just, say again, pass fail. I could do scaled score or, whatever. Here I'll do pass fail. Why not? And I'll say, water turned on. And I'll give that pass. And then I'm going to say, well, when that, I want to show the user the results. So when I close the nice job notification, I want the report to pop up and show the user what their results are. And I'm going to anchor that.
Would it save the progress too? Like if a user was just going through it, then they hopped off before they fully completed all the tasks, and then when they restart it, would they be dropped right there?
So you can do that. We do find though that's these scenarios tend to kind of be all in one. And another point to that is that you often don't want to be in VR for an overly long period of time. So we tend to author scenarios so they don't take more than 10 to 15 minutes. So you don't necessarily need those breaks. So yes, that's technically possible, but from a design perspective, we generally don't want to break up those scenarios. We want them to be, kind of cohesive pieces that are short enough that they, don't start giving people motion sickness and what have you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Is there kind of a standard on what like the maximum amount of time is? I mean, I know some people are more sensitive than others, but like in general, like
yeah, I would say, most people in the industry would really say, no more than 20 minutes at the absolute most. And if you can keep it below 10 to 15, that would be better. Certainly if you're starting to reach out beyond 20, even we're wearing headsets all the time, that can still, you get pretty bug-eyed, and it's not necessarily you don't necessarily feel queasy, but you just feel that kind of, you start feeling that disconnect. So you definitely do want to, and keeping in mind too that a lot of your learners will be doing this for the first time, so won't necessarily have those reps. So you do want to try to keep the content as cohesive as possible.
I did want to address one question that was in the chat earlier that I don't think we answered, which was, are there any specific AWS use cases for VR training? And I think, does AWS themselves have any use case for VR training? I mean, AWS, yes, we do. We work with our partners all the time and our customers all the time who want VR training. But if I would interpret this question another way, does Amazon have any use cases for VR training? And absolutely use VR training in our warehouses and facilities all the time. There's huge movements towards using that kind of training. It's amazing for knowledge transfer and being able to, track, like you said, the metrics of what people are doing. So absolutely, there are a ton of use cases, not just at, and even AWS, I think in the data centers, they're also using it to train out personnel. So great question, Makayza. Thanks for asking, but yeah, tons of them.
So Peter, I think we might want to, approaching the bottom of the hour here, probably want to jump over to show some of those soft skills side, because that shows kind of the other exciting use cases and opens up, I think, some avenues for conversation when we start seeing what it looks like to use your voice.
Okay, I will do that. I'm just going to give me 5 minutes to just jump through this. And then, so I finished this up, got the whole thing there, done. Now I say, okay, well, this is great. I'm going to score this stuff. It's ready. Ah, shoot, I need it in Spanish. And like
Hispanic Heritage Month, excellent choice.
there you go. So like here it is in English. All my text is there, and it says en. I switch over to Spanish, and it's not there. Well, why don't I just export all the text to a CSV? Great. Now I've got that CSV, and just for the sake of time, what comes up is a CSV, and I've opened this in something else, and it's just en and some IDs. I've added some Spanish. Great. Now I'm going to export that as a CSV. And just real quick. And then I will jump over there. So delete. So download. CSV.
While you're jumping around a bit, what other languages can you do? I saw there was a
whatever AWS supports.
Yeah, I mean,
you're saying what can we support?
in terms of the authoring, literally any language, because you're putting the content in, and as long as you have a language code for it, you can add content that matches it. So yeah, I mean, this is one of the nice things is you can create a scenario and create it in multiple languages without having to create multiple copies of it, just by going through and doing those translations in line here.
And for the uninitiated, when you say it's up to AWS, what service might you be referring to?
So for the audio, we actually are using we're using Poly currently, but we've been starting to experiment with the newer AI voice models as well. So for doing the actual audio generation, which is we didn't get around to showing off that part of the system. We do leverage some AWS features, and then with some of the AI stuff Peter's going to show. Also, obviously, leverage the Lex voice recognition and language features there.
Love it.
So I just made a very rookie mistake there. So allow me to. Of course, there's IDs associated with all of those things, and that was a CSV that I had opened prior to that, and so those IDs didn't match, and so I'm just really quickly just dropping them in, and I'll watch so you can see how I'm doing that. So I just came over here. I'm adding an ES column, I'm dropping in some Spanish. Cylinder and sync. I don't have one for that, but that's fine. And then I'm going to download this as a CSV, so you can see that this is all very real and I'm not brushing over it. I'm going to import that text, which is this one. Okay, now, boom, there we go. Yes, it's in Spanish. All good. So cool. English and Spanish or whatever language, very easy. Export the text, get it translated, re-import, and you're good. You don't have to recreate these scripts. The last thing, and then I'll move the soft skills. I promise.
And that represents a pretty common flow for anybody who's been involved in a major software project where you create a CSV or a spreadsheet like that with all of the translations to one language, and then send it off to a service to fill in the translations for another, whether they're using AI or humans to do that translation.
Absolutely. So I will just publish this, just like the other one. Come over here. I say, my new my lab scenarios. Publish it. And so what I just did is create a snapshot in time of the scenarios that are published and any media they need to run, including those asset bundles. And then once I have that, I can then say, I'm going to deploy that to launch server, which is where we started this whole wonderful journey. So now I can come back up to launch server, and here's that content. Just do a quick refresh. And there's content, my lab scenarios. From there, I can very quickly make a module and say, water dispenser. I can add the content, which is a bundle. I can say my lab. I can select which scenarios I want. I only want that one for this. So again, you can deep link right into it and make different modules for your different people. I'll drag in an image there. I can add the application, which I've already added Motive Lab. I can use that again, send it wherever I want for LRS credentials. I can use plugins. I can do a WebGL build, do it that way, hit create. I can add myself as a learner. Add. And then what I can do over here on Oculus is, and then I will jump to soft skills. But it's kind of like I started at one place and then I went all the way back, and then we found ourselves here again. And what I'm going to do is say, and great, and there's my water dispenser demo. And if I wanted to, I could just very simply say, okay, well, now that I have that, the same way I downloaded the content before and uploaded it to that third-party LMS, and that's the whole flow from Unity all the way up through StoryFlow, changing the content, localizing it, and then making it available for your learners through your normal third-party system. So it's a lot there. So let's do some soft skills. Any questions about that? So I kind of ran through that before, and that'll give me a moment to get the soft skills ready. So if anyone has any questions, that'd be great.
I guess generally, could you guys maybe tell our audience how they could get started with learning about the platform if you guys offer anything?
Sure thing. Yeah. I mean, we, obviously the best place is to reach out. Happy to get on a call, and that's where usually our engagements get started. But if there is a fit, one of the great things that we have is Motive Academy, which actually is a self-paced learning tool that takes you through how to start building content using Motive. And we have two different tracks, one that covers that assembler track. So if you are more technical and you have a couple of years of experience with Unity, you can get on that assembler track and start learning how to do this scene configuration so that you can deliver it to learning teams. And then we have the author track, and that's the one where you're actually going to learn to use that drag and drop authoring tool that Peter's been showing.
That's great.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, let's see, central applications, sales demos, there we go. I had applications before, and I was saying, okay, well, I've got the Motive Lab and some other things, but I can have WebGL here as well. So I'm just going to launch this, and I'm going to talk to the avatar for a second. So, and this is going to log me in through StoryFlow. You can do it through launch, so you're tracking the data, but this one will allow me to make changes to the soft skills scenarios. But I'm going to show you one, and then we're going to author one together. And keep in mind that everything I've been showing you is super basic. Most of these scripts are multi-branched, have several reusable components. There's quite a lot to it. So I show you this in WebGL for a few reasons. You can do all this in VR for sure. You can do all this in WebGL. It just depends. So I could be doing the soft skills in VR. I could be doing the lab in WebGL. It doesn't matter, wherever you want to do it. So
when we're talking about soft skills, what soft skills are you mostly having these training applications for?
So we're mostly focused on saying, here are the tools that allow you to create those scenarios. So we're less about what the content is, and more saying, we want you to have the ability to make the content you want to. But it's using your voice to drive the simulation, and then being able to hear the voice and then have the avatar react in ways that you want or you feel are appropriate.
And a lot of the places where we're seeing soft skills, one example is sales training. That comes up a lot, teaching people, giving them those reps, dealing with customers putting forward objections and how to handle that. And then the other one are another big area is difficult conversations, workplace harassment and that kind of thing. So the demo here that Peter's going to show is a very limited version of something that might happen in an office, but those are probably a couple of the main areas. But one thing that is worth kind of pointing out is that because Motive and StoryFlow is a hybrid tool that can do both types of training, it really expands the ways you can leverage conversational AI. Maybe you're having a conversation with a coworker. Maybe you need to work through a procedure that involves a particular vocal sequence with with another character in the scene. One example is training we've done with Transport Canada. investigating a site where an incident took place, and they have to interview different people at that site. And so this is a great example where you need that spatial awareness. You're inspecting an aircraft, you're talking to the people there, but you also need those reps on how to ask questions, how to deal with somebody who's maybe acting evasive, and so on.
Yeah, that combination can be very powerful. So I'm not sure if it's picking up all of your audio as well as my audio here. So I'm going to ask that I'm just going to talk to this guy for 2 seconds, and then we can continue this conversation. So again, Fade, there's nobody in the chair, spawning him in there.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain till the man behind the curtain is ready.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
How was your weekend?
It was great. We visited family.
Any project updates?
There are a few trouble spots, but we are trying to get through them.
It's time for your performance review.
I think this will work out great.
Again, assessment items, tracking it the same way I was to say whatever else. So let's author something together. I'm hoping this looks really familiar to you. So this was the one we just went through. It's just a story flow project. I spawn in those assets. If I didn't want to use Tom, I could use Maya or Leo or somebody else. I'm going to stick with Tom for now. Then I'm not going to save that. And then I have a separate section for each one. So I launch a greeting script, a how is work script, and I do all these things so I can reuse them. Again, we often find that people, again, with that theater analogy, they make the environment, but there's multiple training scenarios that they want to make inside of it. And the same step that's, say, step 5 in scenario A is often step 7 in scenario B. So if you create a small script that's just doing that particular thing, you can just reuse it again and again. And so you wind up with these libraries of reusable scripts. So this project, in comparison to, so this one, see backups is here. And these ones, this is the one we were working on before. But this one, it's got an AI tab. And so different projects can have different feature sets. And so this one, we've exposed AI as something we can use. We're going to author this upset customer one. I'm going to spawn the assets using Tom. I'm going to put them in the same place. And we're going to have a decision point. So I've bound Tom and his posture to a set of animations that I can use. And we're going to use those as we go. So he's going to say, are you done yet? He's very upset as a customer. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to find a character dialogue. I'll drag that in. I'm going to add a piece of audio, and that's going to be, he's going to have a different voice. It's just a simple demo. I'll show you where you can create that audio using StoryFlow as well, and some other wonderful AWS products. So I'm going to link this audio to Tom. And as soon as I do that, Tom is going to lip sync to this audio. That's all I have to do. And then I'm going to say, well, when that's complete, I want to do the next step. And this is going to be my decision point. So I could say something that will upset him, or I could say the right thing. I could do a few different things here. Yeah, go ahead. Sounded like you were going to say something, Lauren.
Oh, me? No. Nope.
Okay. Cool. So I can have conditions where I listen for speech. I can have this generative AI, which uses that RAG feature I was talking about. All sorts of things. I'm going to use voice input for now. And will one of you just give me a piece of text that lets the user know it's time for them to speak?
Greet the participant.
Perfect. So there it is. There, that will appear. And now I'm going to present some options. So we could do key phrases or intents with voice input. Again, generative AI is this one over here. I'm going to use an intent. And for this one, I'm just going to use some very simple ones, which is the wrong reply. I'll call it that. And that's, me not behaving nicely to this customer. And then I'll add a second one. And this one will be like, hey, I identified the issue or something. Now you can use these events like 1, 2, and 3. I prefer to just make my own, but you can do what you like. And I just call this one wrong reply. Add it, and then this one I will call right reply. You call them whatever you want. Why I like to do this is just, again, using normal language that I normally would in real life. Confidence level is pretty cool. So with intents, you're basically saying, here's a list of phrases, and any of these phrases will work. And if you have that at 100% confidence, you must say one of those phrases exactly. But if you reduce the confidence by saying maybe make it 70%, you can say part of one phrase and part of another, but the AI will kick in and say, okay, I think that's correct enough, and then accept that answer too. And the benefit of using an intent is to say, I can guarantee that every trainee is going to have a consistent experience into the types of training and the training points that they're going to hit. I'm going to be able to machine score it by saying, I know which points were hit and which ones are not. A lot of benefits there. So I could have this persistent to say, when I say this one, then this one's also still available. I'm not going to do that. I could add fail conditions to say, well, when I'm not understood, I want the character to reply in a particular way. You can get into all sorts of cool things with randomization and other things here. Won't have time for that. I'm going to say, well, when the wrong reply happens, let's do one thing. Spell that wrong. So he's going to do a dialogue. Tom speaking. He's going to use this one. It says, I'm bleeding money here. I'm also going to add a look at. So he's going to look right at me when he's doing this. Again, that's default. By default, target looks at the user. You can get really cinematic with how you want that to play out. But I'll just leave it.
I'm glad this isn't part of my job, because this feels like it would get very uncomfortable for me to try and figure out what the wrong. I mean, I'm very glad that somebody probably is doing it over here, but it's like, man.
But that's, if that's what's going on, then like in a way, especially if you're doing it in an immersive way, and you feel that then it's working, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to do this other branch, which is the right reply, and then we'll run through these both, and we'll talk about how these intents get built, how you can use Storyflow, build text-to-speech things. So wrong reply, I've also added this animation where he'll stand up looking unhappy. The right reply, it's just Tom saying something again. You can do facial expressions. I'll show you some of that too in a little bit. So
Wait, and also for the generative AI part of it, like, does the user have a choice of the LLM that's used, or?
Yeah, so right now, we actually, that's a good question, and it is how the system is kind of building out. Currently, we're using the conversational systems like Lex directly, so that's why this is kind of structured around, what I think some people would recognize as a bit of an older type of AI. Now, there are very good reasons why we are still using this regularly. It avoids some of it. It produces much more predictable results, which is much more what learning developers need. You can't just kind of have a GPT talk to you, because you have no idea. It may go off kilter, and there's no real way to assess how it's responding, and then furthermore how the users are responding to it, which is difficult, because with training you do need to be able to score. You need to be able to understand how people navigated through a conversation and give them the assessment. All that being said, a big feature that we've been working on and we have deployed in a couple of places right now is the ability to plug in your own models using a plugin system. So I think Peter alluded to it early on. We have an example of a system using a RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. If you're not familiar, but basically this is an AI that allows you to upload a whole bunch of documentation, and then it leverages an LLM to answer questions from that documentation. And that's added using this plugin system. So we didn't hard code it. We used a plugin system we're developing where we can just kind of attach any sort of agent to it. So the goal in the next few months will be to open that system up and give you access to your own custom LLM, whatever model makes the most sense to solve the problems you're looking for.
Yeah, no, that answers it. Thanks.
I'm going to run upside customer. I'm going to run it once. I'll run it twice so you can see both paths. And so just give me a second while I do that. Notice this, I'm using the same spawn asset script again. I don't have to redo it.
Are you done yet? How long is this going to take?
Back off and let me work.
I'm bleeding money here. This thing cost a fortune and it doesn't work.
That was the wrong reply. So let's do it again.
Has the avatar ever gotten physical?
Not so far, thankfully.
Let me at it.
Are you done yet? How long is this going to take?
I've identified the issue.
So, you found the problem. Okay, so you're on top of it. Thanks.
With soft skills in particular, boy oh boy, you can spawn in one of a few different characters. You have an environment, maybe another one. How many different scenarios can you do? And how many of those, once you have those configured, you don't need any more Unity devs to do anything. You've got your characters, you just come into StoryFlow. It could be interviews, it could be letting someone go, it could be promotions, it could be a difficult conversation, it could be, how to coach someone up on a new procedure, like anything. And so once you have that, you can do a whole lot. Deliver it through the web, deliver it on a headset, up to you. So let's talk a bit about some of the cool AI things that you didn't see before. So there are different catalogs available for AI. So I could have expressions. So I can come in here and say, well, what's happy number 7 look like? I can change these, swivel these around, and then I can save them. And then these will work on any avatar that you have in the scene. So you can create all these different expressions you can use to kind of trigger that emotion. That's fine. Media. So how do I get all of these new voices? So this is using Poly, and I can come in here and I can pick whatever voice. I could say, hello.
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 And then I like that, and I can save it, and I can use it in my scripts. And so however you want to do that, we do have a cool feature coming out soon. Excuse me. Where, well, Ryan, you could talk a bit about speakers, eh?
Yeah, so what Peter's showing here is the ability to kind of pre-record audio from generated using, in this case, this is Amazon Poly, which is a bit of an older service. But we are building out the AI system to, again, using a plugin model to be able to use other voice providers, like some of the new AI voices from Amazon. But that gives the voices you can create a speaker profile, you can adjust their tone, you can make them happy, sad, what have you. And then you can also have it generate the content on the fly. So currently the model here, you pre-record the audio. In a future version, you're actually going to be able to dynamically generate it as you go. But one of the things that's beneficial with these voices and using the pre-recorded audio is that a lot of times a human can still do a better job of kind of capturing the right emotional tone in the voice. So using a system here, you can actually kind of build out the scenarios with, these robo voices or these recorded voices. Once you get sign off from the subject matter experts or the client that the flow of the conversation is right, a lot of times at that point, you'll actually want to go back and re-record those lines with a human. What's nice about StoryFlow is that you just have to go and re-upload those files. If you give them the same name, it's going to automatically replace all of the files in the scenario so that you're not having to re-author and re-add all of the media. You can just, much like you did with the translations, just record new versions and inject them directly into your scenario.
I imagine with this new plugin feature that you guys are building out, if a company or a customer is already using like Q for Business, say Amazon Q for Business, that they could kind of link it to that so that the backends would be generated by their internal data, their documents, their stuff that they've already been collecting for Q for Business.
Yeah, definitely, and that is absolutely one of the kind of key perspectives of what we're trying to do with XMS is to say, as I was alluding to before, this type of interactive content is new, and it needs a central hub to manage all of that. And so as much as XMS comes out of the box with a lot of features, one of the kind of hidden pieces, and thanks for bringing it up, is this plugin system we're developing that's allowing us to reach out and connect with other existing infrastructure, whether it's AI, whether it's authentication, whether it's security compliance and what have you, because, you know, this sort of technology exists in an ecosystem. You know, there is no one size fits all solution, and being able to make the platform as flexible as possible is really, really crucial to having that success.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
I love to see it.
With the speaker feature that Ryan was mentioning too, it is inside of StoryFlow. This AI tab right here, it'll have another option for speakers. But here I can add key phrases. I can keep track of those. You know, these are intense. So I could say, well, you know, I was asking about the weekend, but any of these phrases will work just fine. I can add new phrases. That's fine. I can change the language of those phrases if I want. I can test in here, like say, how's it going? And I can use my microphone as well, or I can just type, and it's going to tell me what the confidence level of that particular phrase is. So, you know, we had a case of doing this for a hospital, and you're asking the avatar patient how they're feeling. And, you know, there was a British doctor all of a sudden, and he didn't say, how are you feeling? How are you doing? He said, are you fitting well? And so, but all you need to do is come right in here and add that phrase, hit save, hit reset on the headset. Just within the APK, you don't have to restart the APK, and then all of a sudden it's recognized and you're good to go. So you can very quickly add on to these phrases if you're using Intense. But then going in the generative AI direction, as Ryan was mentioning, it's another ball game, I think. But anyway, whole lot of cool stuff. I did not get to multiplayer. I did not get to being able to change what content is presented at runtime based on choices the user makes. I did not get to show how cool it is when you're using a properly designed script, which just launches small little other scripts. I did not get to go into like how every time you see the symbol, this is just a variable, and I can change what content it is based on choices the user makes, how to show results of multiple choices. So many things I didn't get to. But I'll stop there, and I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see all of you again, and happy to answer some questions. Hello, I haven't seen you for an hour.
It's so awkward. We've been staring at you the whole time.
Yeah.
What kind of feedback are you getting? Obviously, you're getting good feedback, right? You're doing very well, and you're getting customers. But like, what kind of feedback, like on, like, kind of the newer things that you're putting out there, are customers most excited about?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think you know, this is probably a boring answer, but we really love it when customers are seeing ROI, and I think for me, you know, as you know, VR is often seen as exciting and new and you know, flashy and whatnot, but at the end of the day, this is a business product, you know, and that's what's exciting to me. And you know, so one example is we're working with a major retailer. And I mean, you guys, you know, you're Amazon, you understand how challenging the picking process is in a warehouse. And so, you know, and mistakes you know, can be very, very costly. We've built out a training program for picking scenarios in these warehouses, and they're seeing a 20% reduction in error rates for picking. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but when picking errors can cost millions and millions of dollars a month. So you take 20% of those millions of dollars, and this investment in VR immediately, you know, pays off in multiples. And so, you know, as much as we love delivering cool, exciting products, what gets me excited is when we see that tangible business value bringing this technology to enterprise clients.
Along those, you know, following up with that leads me to another question. How long does it usually take, you know, customers to see that ROI? Because it's very intangible in the beginning, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it can definitely take a while, and I do think that if you're going to put your foot into this market, you have to be ready to stick with it for 18 or 24 months. The other thing I would say, and this was, one of the things that we really liked about this client, and we were actually working with a partner who did a lot of good work on the front, you really do need to come into it with a plan. Make sure you have kind of a thesis in advance about how this can improve your business in some way or another. I think when we were getting started, we had a tendency to just grab whatever work would come our way. And a lot of times, a project would get out there and everybody would love it. They thought it was exciting and they loved the headsets and the quality of the content was excellent, but it wasn't attached to any sort of business value or business outcome. And those projects would eventually fade away. So, you definitely do, need a bit of patience, but what we're seeing is that in the medium and long term, the potential value of that is massive.
That's awesome. It's always good to hear. The realistic number is, a year and a half, 2 years. Like these things take time, but you can either start now or you can be 4 years out and start in 2 years, right? So
yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, and just the enterprise sales cycle is also something that everybody, whether you're on the buying side or the selling side, has to be aware of. And so again, it does require patience, but if you with the proper planning, you can really see that meaningful ROI. And I think when you're trying to ask people to kind of change how they do something as dramatically as this, it is a bit awkward to put a headset on. Not everybody's comfortable with that. You do need those massive returns in order for it to be worthwhile.
Segueing just a little bit, just because it just popped into my mind. You've come a long way in the last 2 years that we've been working together. So well done. But originally you started off as like AR training. So is that AR piece still available? I know we didn't go over it at all today.
Yeah, for sure. So in fact, we go back even further than that. We were more kind of just generally in the AR market, working actually way back in the day on location-based games, and then kind of took this same tool set and found that the problems we were solving for AR were very applicable for VR. So we definitely do some AR, because StoryFlow is so adept at creating immersive interactive scenarios. It's a bit of a better fit in most cases for VR types of scenarios, whereas AR tends to be more built around performance support or remote assistance and that sort of thing. That being said, we have deployed several AR projects and they've been very successful. So and then as Peter was demonstrating, we can also put things on the web. We can put them on a device. Anytime you're having an interactive experience with usually something spatial, the platform can definitely help you get that going.
I wouldn't mind highlighting one or two other points. I think it's AWS has certainly been a fantastic partner, but there's also many other small ISVs, independent software vendors, who are using the Motive platform to build content faster for their enterprise clients. So it's not just a case of us building the content. It's saying, hey, these are tools available for so many other people to use, and then they're seeing the value of producing that content faster, having those immediately ready for IT review moments when their pilots succeed. So it's really fun to not only have us see that value, but see our partners see that value too.
And I wonder if that was a surprise to you, that was a market that would open up. I don't know. Did you start off saying, "Hey, we want developers to use us to do this," or?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that was absolutely kind of, again, my background came from building developer tools at Microsoft, and then later building kind of server infrastructure.
I'm sorry, who?
Well, that other company, I can't remember their name now. They're not.
My internet's
they're not
going
important.
weird again. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But that was definitely kind of the where we wanted to get. A lot of times, if you're bootstrapping a platform, you have to be the first users of it. I mean, it's a well-known phrase in the industry. You got to eat your own dog food. So we do a lot of that building and content creation ourselves. But yeah, we have seen, to Peter's point, a lot of success in the last couple of years, having other companies adopt it and then use it with their clients, which is super exciting for us.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. And gives me some other ideas for some of our other partners that we work with.
And also,
Curious to hear
for
about
our viewers, I just wanted to drop in that Motive is on Marketplace. I'm going to drop that in the chat as well. If you guys do want to go ahead, check them out.
Very nice.
And with that, we are on our last 5 minutes. So if anyone has any questions, definitely drop in the chat right now. Otherwise, we can get on with wrapping up. Give them
Yeah,
a
I'm not
couple
seeing
seconds.
anything come through. Quiet bunch today. It's all good.
Yeah. Well, reach out anytime. All the viewers, whoever's curious to hear more, we'd love to hear from you.
Yep.
Yeah,
And if you
if
need to
not-
get in contact with them, I'm assuming one, you can always contact me on LinkedIn, and I can, or if you know me, you can shoot me an email. But what's the easiest way to get a direct hold of you guys if they do have questions? That hello@motive.
Yeah, that's the best email. I mean, Peter and I have pretty predictable email addresses, Peter or Ryan at Motive.io, and so we're always happy to answer direct emails as well. So yeah, plenty of ways to reach out, and we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah,
Amazing.
sounds good. Thank you guys for taking the time, showing us some really cool demos, talking us through this. And thank you to our viewers. Definitely join us again next time. Again, every Wednesday, well, every other Wednesday, we've got Howdy Partner for our next partner.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.